Get ready.
Okay, and in this tutorial, we're going to talk about the custom shapes, presets, and effects. Now, each one of these effects has sort of like their own features, but they are all based off of the Outliner custom shape right here. Okay, I've got some new clips loaded up in a new project here. But first, let's drag the Outliner custom shape to our girl with the headphones that we saw in the first tutorial. Right away, over here in the viewer, you'll notice you have 12 points that you can drag around to create whatever custom shape you want. And in the middle here, you've got your standard transform controls where you can move the shape or scale it or rotate it. And over here in the inspector, let's take a look at all the parameters and options of the custom shape. These are going to be exactly the same for the custom presets and mostly the same for the custom shape effects. So right off the bat, you can see we have these controls for the on-screen controls. There's a lot of controls here, numbers and points, and the transform controls. You may not want all that on the screen at the same time. You might not want any of it on the screen at the same time. So here we can change it to say just points only, where we're not going to accidentally, move the position of the outline by hitting the transform controls. You can have it just be the transform only controls. That way you're not accidentally altering your shape. And of course the first option was points and transform. And you can turn it all off right here. But you say, hey, I still see the numbers up there. Well, those come in handy when you start drawing your own shape to know it's going to animate from point 1 around here to point 12 when it animates on. And so you might want to turn these off if they're getting in the way. But you do need to turn them off before output because they will show up in your project. So the point labels have their own little checkbox here. You can turn them on, you can turn them off. Let's leave them on, and I'll go ahead and turn on the points and transform. Let's have all our controls here on the screen. As you adjust the transform controls, you can see the size, position, rotation. Those are all going to change in the inspector. So you can adjust it on screen here, or if things get too small, where you can't really even grab the controls, you might want to change the size over here. And you might want to dial in just a particular rotation or XY coordinate. Okay, another little option we have here is flip. This is going to flip the entire design on the horizontal axis. Pretty simple. And the next section here is the animation section. As we scrub through, you can see it kind of draws on. And the speed that occurs is this slider right here. As you make your clip longer and shorter, this is based on a 10-second clip, kind of a good setting. But if you make your clip super short, it's gonna animate on faster. And if you make it super long, it's gonna animate on slower. So you may want to adjust to taste. If you don't want it to animate on at all, go ahead and slide the in speed all the way to the right, 100. And that's as fast as it's going to animate on, which is a cut. It's already on. So I'll undo that. And we have the outspeed, of course, which is the same thing. And we have easing. This will make it start to draw on very slow and then speed up and then slow down. Right now, it's going to animate with the easing totally at 0. It's going to animate all at a continuous linear speed. If I crank up the easing and we take a quick look, you'll see it kind of draws on. A little more natural, but it depends on what you need. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back off. Now wriggle works just like the effects, except for instead of kind of making your outline wavy, it's going to animate these little points in a random pattern. Faster and more random the more you crank it up. So if we crank it up a little bit here, you'll see the points just kind of move a bit haphazardly. And tell you what, let's turn it off for now. We might turn it on in a little bit. The outline is 12 points, as you can see right here. But every one of these presets and effects, you can switch to 6 points if you like, just to make things a little simpler. And when you switch to 6, you'll see it's basically just turning off every other point. You've got 1, 3, 5, 7 now. I'm going to turn it back on to 12. The next option is to close the path. That's going to connect 1 and 12 right down here. And we have all of our 5 styles available: neon, extrude, electric. I'm just going to leave it on neon, but you know, if you wanted it to look electric, there you go. Extrusion, we'll take a look at those a little later. Why don't we go ahead and draw our rough path around her. I'm going to want it to animate on from down here, her lower right shoulder, around her head, and around her shoulders. So let's go ahead and we'll make, kind of put 7 here as the neck. Kind of move 8 over here to this shoulder. This is 9, maybe kind of off the screen here. 10 down off the screen. 11. This can get messy. This is an art form, right? 12 over here, and we'll animate this stuff. Kind of draw these up around her head. Don't know what we're going to do with this yet. And bring 1 back down here. And we will use that closed path. I tell you what, I'm going to leave the path open now so we can look at the next few options. Width. Certainly I think we want to make this bigger. We're going to have this just be kind of a highlight for her, like while she's dancing around. Roundness. We definitely want to increase the roundness, don't we? To look at the next few options, though, I'm going to turn the roundness off and switch this to line. Now we have our basic outline. We can control these little joints here. You can see, even though the roundness is turned off, they're kind of curved. That is because the joints are set to round. If we wanted to, we can make them square, so they can have a nice sharp edge there. Or we could put it on bevel, which kind of bevels off the corner. I'll just leave it on round. Now the start cap and end cap, that is the start of your path and the end of your path. You can make these be round, which is what they default to, or you can square them off. You can bevel them off, which is kind of a point, really. Or you can make them an arrow. And we've got some arrow width and length controls down here at the bottom. Don't know that we need the arrow. Let's just leave it on round. And we'll turn it back to neon. And we'll close the path. You wouldn't have seen the arrows if I didn't have the path open like that. And so before we get to playing this back and seeing what it looks like, let's take a look at some other options we have down here. That we have this section here called outside path. This is going to give you the ability to colorize or blur everything on the outside of your path. The first checkbox here is black and white. If you're going to colorize it, you may or may not want to mix the colors together. So let's make it black and white. And the next choice is the color overlay. This is what we're going to tint the color or colorize it. Let's go with this blue. And you don't see it yet because I need to bring the color opacity slider up. That's next. So if I turn this black and white checkbox off, it'll let some of the original color bleed through. I like it for this one. It just depends on what you're doing. We can also blur this background. It's pretty blurry already, but let's crank that up. You can crank it way up by clicking in the field here and dragging. We'll just leave it 64. That's good. The mask feather, you can't see it while the outline is on very well, so let's Let's take the outline, and we didn't even talk about this. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. The outline opacity. We can turn the outline all the way off by just lowering the opacity. And now you see the mask determining what's in and outside of the path. We can go in here with the mask feather and kind of feather it toward the inside or feather it toward the outside. And if you want to, you can really crank this up and really soften it. But as we have the outline on top, I don't think we need that. So if the opacity of the outline, maybe you wanted it like half opaque, you know, or somewhere really low opacity here. So you can kind of see the mask there. That might be when you want to feather it. But I'm going to undo that, and we're going to turn the opacity all the way back up. Inside the path, pretty self-explanatory. It has the same black and white option. You can add a color to her. Let's see, maybe pink. Crank up the color opacity. And now we've tinted her kind of pink. And we can turn the black and white on and off to let some of the color, like see here, I think it doesn't look good mixing with her skin. So let's just keep it a monotone pink there. And we could blur her if we wanted, but I don't think we need to do that. Down below here, you can see you have all the points. You can manually enter the coordinates for the X and Y for all 12 points if you want to. They are there if you need it. So this outline is on top of her. I'm going to go down here in the timeline. She has an alpha channel, and then we have the background. I'm going to move the outline below her. And this, see, it's not really doing much, so I think we need to go up here and crank up this wriggle control to make it move around. She's dancing around. That's too much. We could leave it squared off like this, but I think we want to crank up the roundness. And maybe we even want to make it a little bit wider. All right, let's see what that looks like. Oh, and here we are. You forget they're even there, but the numbers are still on the screen. Let's turn off the point labels. And it didn't animate on that quick, so I'm going to crank up the in speed and the out speed for that matter a little bit. And the easing, yeah, maybe we do want to have it. So back to the beginning we go. Let's hit play. I like it. So it's just kind of a fun background for our model with the headphones here. Okay, so all of these custom presets you see here, these are all based on the custom shape. We've just kind of created a few things we thought you might find interesting for you. What can we create with 12 points was the basic goal here. But this is a good example here to show you how you might use one of these custom shapes. Here is a little bar scene. Some people saying cheers. So this is a good opportunity to take the wine glass shape, drag it to the timeline. I'm going to shorten it up. I'm going to shrink the wine glass. I'm going to rotate it though and move it over here. And you know what? I forgot to mention that every one of these custom shapes and effects has a text field. But you can always turn it on here. And the only way to edit it is in the text inspector. So once you select it, I can make it say wine and spirits. And it's going to stick with your object. And so since we rotated our shape here, not really an object, I'm going to have to offset that rotation in the text inspector down here under the Z control. We're going to rotate that, square it up a bit, and I'm going to move it up to the top of the screen. And of course, we can make it bigger and colorize it and style it as we would any other Final Cut Pro title. Okay, let's go back to the title inspector, and we're going to go down and look at playing with our outside path where we might want to make everything outside of it blurry. Maybe we'll darken it up a bit, increase the opacity of that. That's really blurry. I'm not going to, let's dial that back a bit. So that's pretty good, but obviously I plan on adding the martini glass. You gotta have wine and spirits, right? Now I'll shorten that one up. So here is our martini glass. Let's scale it back. The background is already blurry. Let's scale it back. Let's rotate it and move it over here. Now let's take a look at that. And it all fades off. So that's just a quick hint at what you can do with custom shapes. I'm sure you guys will find some great uses for them.